just somebody who wasn't important to write about.
Yeah.
And in the book, he does make a reference to a similarity between the Herod wanting to go murder him, and this is it, the story in regards, the allegory in regards to the birth of Horus and Set wanting to go out and murder Horus.
Sure.
During that birth, at least in that allegory.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely one thing to keep in mind, is that the story of Osiris, Isis, and Horus is an allegory. It is not real individuals.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But it does, make the reference in this book, as I was stating earlier, that these pharaohs, Akhenaten, Amenhotep, and what is the other one here?
Tutmosis, yeah.
Were these real life characters who some of these Old Testament characters were based upon.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many allegories, and I think a lot of people have picked up on this. I know that Ralph Ellis talks a little bit about this, and as I mentioned, I think Michael Tesseron also picks up on this, of course, and Jordan Maxwell has obviously done his homework on this kind of where mythology and religion kind of intersects and all of this. I don't know if you had the time to see the movie Zeitgeist a while back. It's pretty popular on the web, at least. Kind of dived into this.
That one.
You did, yeah, the first part. So this material is definitely, it's out there and it's very, very interesting, and it seems to be coming to the light more and more. We can compare the different mythologies, and I think there were like 13 or 16 in total of what they call the crucified saviors, and I think Horus also was considered to be one of these. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes mention of that in the book here, that that Horus was hung on a tree.
Yeah.
And the same thing, they say in the Bible that, Jesus was hung upon a cross, but he goes and makes some references from the Bible and the Talmud that it states that also that Jesus was hung on a tree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty difficult to, at this point, to sort out what actually has happened and what hasn't happened and what is just, story after construction or whatever. But again, there's so many different varieties to this. Do you think, I don't know if Mustafa Gedala goes into this anything in the book, but is there any kind of, does he write about anything of the spiritual messages of the, either if we look at the Jesus story or the Horus story,
Yeah, he does. This is what after he covers all in part 2 of the book called The Historical Christ King, he covers the similarities between the both mythologies. And then he gets into a third part here, which is called the Egyptian Christian Essence. And he talks about these the similarities between the teachings of Jesus and the son of Akhenaten, Pharaoh Tutankhamun. And it says, the Christ of faith is rooted in the ancient Egyptian religion, as was sporadically demonstrated in the previous chapters. The rest of this book will focus on the major aspects of the religious essence, practices, and traditions of Christianity that were plagiarized of the Egyptian religion. The very thing that is now called the Christian religion was already in existence in ancient Egypt long before the adoption of the New Testament. The British Egyptologist E.A. Wallace Budge, in his book Egyptian Religion, Egyptian Ideas of Future Life, writes, the Egyptians possessed some 6,000 years ago a religion and a system of morality, which when stripped of all corrupt accretions stands second to none among those which have been developed by the greatest nations of the world. Long ago, the ancient Egyptians believed in the coming of a Messiah, a Madonna, and her child, a virgin birth, and the incarnation of the Spirit in flesh. The ancient Egyptian texts reveal irrefutable proof that the entire body of Christian doctrine is simply a revamped and mutilated Egyptianism. The early Christian church accepted these ancient truths as the very tenets of Christianity, but disavowed their origins. Plagiarizing the Egyptian religion was noted by several brave writers as, the British Egyptologist E.A. Wallace Budge and the Gods of the Egyptians. The new religion, which was preached there. Oh, well, this is what you just read in the beginning here. He repeats it.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's pretty interesting because also you start wondering, we can see so much Egyptian symbolism in like royal regalia and stuff like this. And if indeed the story, the Christian story was borrowed or transmuted or whatever, morphed into the Christian Bible. One wonder also who the Bible was written for, because if we think about it, Gutenberg, who's didn't start printing the first versions of the Bible until like 1452 or something like that. I think punched it up on Wikipedia. So about almost 1,000 years after Christianity was created. Then the Bible became, somewhat available to people who at least could read at that point. So it's pretty interesting, to consider these things. If what you mentioned earlier, of course, that a lot of, for instance, Masonic lodges and orders that are have connections to the different royalties around Europe and elsewhere, that they have, prominently featured the Bible in their lodges and stuff like this. So one does, tend to think that there is knowledge that this story goes way, way back further, than to around the year zero,
Yeah, I definitely feel that the religions, were created as a control mechanism for people, and I guess to trap them in ways. Because if you look at the twisting of things and some of the ideas, the fairy tales that people believe in, in a way it fosters a split mind itself. And there's definitely, I think, what they wanted to do as well is take the truth unto themselves and hide it from the people. That's why, we don't know so much about Egypt, that it's kind of been hidden in history from us. And that they themselves have taken this truth that, they've kept to themselves and twisted it to their own means, which at that point it becomes corrupted and it's not the truth anymore. It is, and it is not, and yet it still is.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But there's, let me try and find this one part here where there are these negative confessions that, they speak about here. He says, in a book of instructions, the Egyptian king advised his son, the prince, to attain the highest qualities, because upon his death he would see his whole lifetime in a single instant, and his performance on earth will be reviewed and evaluated by the judges. Even as far back as the period of the 6th dynasty, we find the idea that heaven was reserved for those who have performed their duty to man and to the divine powers, while on earth no exceptions were made to a king or anyone else. And that's as it is, as the Gadal was saying, it's being taught in the Egyptian sense. But there's definitely exceptions being made for these elites.
That's right. Yeah.
And as stated earlier, ancient Egyptians expressed their metaphysical beliefs in a story form like a sacred drama or a mystery play. The following are the Egyptian symbolic representation of the process of the Judgment Day. The soul is deceased and led to the hall of judgment of the double Ma'at. She is double because the scales balance only when there is an equality of opposing forces. Ma'at's symbol is the ostrich feather, representing judgment or truth. Her feather is customarily mounted on the scales. Anubis, an opener of the way, guides the deceased to the scales and weighs the heart. the heart as a metaphor for conscience is weighed against the feather of truth to determine the fate of the deceased. The seated grand ancestor Osiris presides in the hall of justice. The jury consists of 42 judges or accessors. Each judge has a specific jurisdiction over a specific sin or fault. The spirit of the deceased denies committing each sin before its assigned judge by reciting the 42 negative confessions. These negative confessions come from chapter 125 of the Book of the Coming Forth by Light, or what is more commonly known as the Book of the Dead.
Yeah.
The assigned juror or judge will declare his or her acceptance by declaring ma kuru, true of voice or action. And then he goes through and translates, gives the translations of these 42 negative confessions. And I'll just read a few of them, and they sound very similar to what we have today as the Ten Commandments.
Okay.
And number one is, I have not done iniquity. Number two, I have not robbed with violence. To continue, I have not stolen. I have done no murder. I have done no harm. I have not defrauded offerings. I have not diminished obligations. I have not plundered the Neteru. And he explains in the book that the Neteru is the all. And that to the Egyptians, the Neteru is basically the one God, but all the different Egyptian gods in the cosmology were different qualities of that one God.
Yeah.
And he also explains in the book that Akhenaten threw away all these other qualities and just declared the Aten as the one God, and pretty much created this sort of, I guess, spiritual fascism and mutilated a lot of the Egyptian teachings, and because of that, he was, kicked out of Egypt.
Sure, yeah.
But if you read this here, it's saying that I have not done this or have done that. It's not saying thou shalt not.
Yeah, there's a difference there, definitely.
Yeah, it's a very big difference.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's very, very big, very important.
Yeah.
Because you have the individual stating, I have not done, instead of this projection. And we find that when I mentioned the splitting of the mind in religions, it's not with a lot of people who are into these religions, you find that they exemplify that type of thinking where it's like, you have to do this and you have to be this way and you have to have Christ in your heart and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't live it themselves.
And I guess also if you go by a book that much, what I found is kind of weird with the whole thing is that you can always find things that are what's the word I'm looking for here? Excuse me, AJ, I'm just going to pull this out here. I can't believe I lost this word. There is so many contradictions, that's the word I'm looking for, in the Bible. So you can basically state one thing and take an excerpt, let's say, from the Bible and say, this, you shouldn't do this, or, he did that, so that's an example, that we should live by, or whatever. And then you can actually go in and probably draw out a total opposite against what just has been commanded or stated or said by someone. And I think that this also creates a very big split, and people, can cherry pick at certain, points, basically, from where they want to draw this information. And this, to me at least, kind of create this split, as you mentioned, because people go so much by the book that they don't anymore, go by their own heart and decide what they want to do or how they feel about it. What do you think?
Yeah, they're no longer thinking about it. So in one verse they're reading "Thou shalt not kill," and the next verse they're reading about these, exploits where they're going out and murdering people. There's parts in the Bible where it says, "Go out and murder everybody in the